All right, nose time. The nose is an interesting one. People tend to sculpt this just as one shape. They look at the reference and they're really trying to just do the whole potato thing. They put a potato on the face and now they're just carving out the nostrils, and they're wondering why doesn't it look very good? Well, it's because you haven't split it up into the different components. When it comes to sculpting, you want to treat different areas of different tissue in a different way. Here we have a bone, we have cartilage, and we have fat. So again, one of the things we talked about in the other video is that there's a lot of bone going around here. This is so important to get right, because if you don't have bone, then you can't really get the structure of it. If you were to look at a skull, it would basically have this region missing, and then you would just have this part. So you clearly have this part as a static thing, and if you check on yourself as well, like you're touching your own face, which I recommend doing whenever you're sculpting a face, this part will be completely static. You can't deform this. But if when you're moving your nose back and forth, if you're doing that, then you'll be able to deform this area, but not this, because bone, pretty inflexible. Then we have this part, the green and the red part. The naming isn't that important, but what is important, this last part of naming, is that it's cartilage, which means it's flexible.
Cartilage is disgusting.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird thing, but that's what the nose is all about. You have some fat and you have some cartilage. That's basically what makes up the nose. Yeah. That's why I think in terms of the naming, it's not so... It can also be confusing just because the names themselves don't necessarily describe the shape. They're more descriptive of what does it consist of. When you have names for the body, it's very easy to understand because it's a muscle that goes from one point to another. But like your nose, how do you describe that with a shape? I think when it comes to this, you're way better off trying to remember. You see the color coding, the way the blue meets the red meets the green. Like these three distinct shapes, remembering that and like looking at individual variation, that's what's going to help you sculpt really good noses.
Yeah. We see here as well that you see there's a white part in the middle. This is of the greater alar cartilage, whatever name, doesn't matter. But you see there's a big white part here, which means that they're not connected. And in some people, you can see a clear differentiation here, where some people it's almost connected, and in some people you see this clear ridge in the middle. So definitely keep that in mind when you're sculpting.
Yeah, that's all down to, again, individual variation. Yeah. You have something like Henry Cavill, I think. He's got a pretty distinct one. But then, like in kids, it's I don't really feel like you see it that much because there's a lot of fat still there, and then that tends to disappear as you get older. And that's the same thing with the noses, with the ears. This one keeps growing.
Yes.
As much as you don't want it to, it does.
And that is one of the parts as well where it's important to know what's cartilage and fat and what's bone, because the bone doesn't grow.
No.
So that's static. So the part you would see growing would be this part. So you often see older people have this nose which goes out here.
Yeah.
We also have the fatty pad, which is this. And you can see how it connects in here as well. It's really important to get the connection right. This is something you just learn the more you sculpt.
And again, that part is so varied between people. Some people, you see the red and the blue connects into one another. For some people, the red goes down into the philtrum and the blue goes into the nostrils. So it's all about your reference here. Really is. You can sculpt it wrong, but there are many ways to sculpt it right.
Yes. Then we have the nasolabial fold as well. This is one of the names I do memorize because this is such an important feature, particularly when you're in production as well. You have this loop, which you're doing topology. You have a loop going all the way around it, and there is so much deformation happening in this. So of the names of the face, I do actually remember, and I think it's important. This is one of them. So one of the key things as well to individual variation when it comes to the nose is the proportion of these shapes. If you want like a big nose going out here, you would just move the green part a bit out, and you might also change the shape of the skull. If you want this like super cute little Disney princess nose, you would just change the shape, the proportion of these specific elements as well. So I think that's super important. Again, these pieces are the same in all people. Everyone have these pieces, but the proportion is vastly different, particularly between different races as well.
Yeah.
Huge variation to them, but it's all proportion.
I think that's all we have to say about the nose. So now just commit these shapes to memory, and you're good to go.
Good to go.